Lovecraft Country is a very unusual tale.
I thought the world was one way, and I found out it isn't. And it terrifies me.
We've got monsters and zombies and strange creatures and magic.
It's just a wicked show.
We bend the rules, we create new rules. It's quite genre breaking.
We get really deep into what it means to be a black family in the 1950s.
This journey is embedded in the realism of the Jim Crow era. Our hero characters deal with both the supernatural elements and the very real horrors of racism.
Get on the ground! What was that?
It spans the past, the present, being 1955, and the future. Way, way, way in the future.
When you walk on the set, it feels like my DNA is here. It's in this story, it's here.
I think we've all been inspired by the ambition of the series. What's exciting is to see the story become realized.
It's a big show. I pitched a big show. I said we kind of want to go everywhere. We want to do all the genres. The sky's the limit, the moon's the limit, the next universe, and multiverses are the limit.
It really blows my mind, the work, the ingenuity that's gone on in creating Lovecraft Country.
You have to see it for yourself.
I love Pope stories. I love that heroes get to go on adventures, in other words, defeat the monsters. Little boys from the south side of Chicago don't notoriously get to do that.
So the story actually began as a failed TV series pitch. And when I originally pitched this as a TV show, I just couldn't get any interest in it.
I just can't figure it out.
So I went back and spent about 5 years figuring out how to make it work as a novel. And while I was working on it, I guess the culture changed a little bit and caught up with what I was thinking about.
I first heard about the book because Jordan Peele and I had met, and he was like, have you heard about this book? And then I saw the cover of Matt Ruff's novel, and I was like, huh, okay. And then I read the first chapter, and I went, even better. And then by the time I got to the 5th chapter, I was like, it's a TV show, we're gonna do it.
My version of the story I've already told, and I think part of what's interesting about this is I always felt that the basic concept of Lovecraft Country was one that could support multiple interpretations. So it's actually kind of neat to see Misha take her swing at it and make changes to the story that I had written and see where that leads.
It's our family story. Some of the details are different. Christina's a man, Uncle George survives Artem, and Dee's a boy.
Yeah, we gender swapped a lot of the characters. And then that just opened up more drama that was exciting to play with, changing Horace from the book to Diana. We have been really seeing a conversation about violence done against Black boys, and we hadn't quite seen the conversation happening to the extent that it was for young Black girls. Changing Caleb from the book to Christina. Here's this secret society and this whole set of guys who say it's the sons of Adam. What happens when you have a daughter? Are there daughters of Adam? Can they be?
My father and his associates would never fraternize with the clan. They're too poor.
Casting is make or break, always. You know, I think that we had all these rich characters and we were just excited to see someone bring another layer to it, bring them to life. And so it was actually quite easy to cast the show because everybody who we cast literally walked into the room and they made it impossible not to see them as that character.
We were blessed by having a cast that was 150% prepared. They were just supreme in dealing with everything we threw at them, whether it was water, fire, explosions, car chases.
I read the script and I just remember thinking, she can't do this with anyone but me. Does she not know this?
You are kind of enthralled with like this. It's almost like this can't really be happening. Like they're not gonna make this. Like this, for real, you know? I haven't even gotten to the strange part.
This, we had no idea what was happening. Like, what? And how, what? And it just was constantly surprising you.
I mean, Misha is a force. She's demanding the audience really ask some difficult questions.
Misha's very ambitious. I know a lot of people say this about projects, but it's truly unlike anything I've ever experienced.
Uncle George, remind me why the White House is white.
War of 1812. British soldiers put the executive branch to torch, then later they had to paint the walls white to cover up the burn marks.
Get your ass up! We gotta get out of here now!
There's a lot of American history we aren't taught in school, and I think that American history is an important story to tell.
Bad tip. The guidebook gets someone killed.
Even though it's set in the 1950s, it was important to make this show timeless.
Any of you all know what a sundown town is?
Yes, sir, we do.
And so our fictional world bleeds into reality. Sundown towns, that's not something we made up, that's true. When we're discussing how to set up our series, I always say, you have to live in it. And so recreating Gordon Parks' pictures was an honor. It was chilling on set to think about it. Looking at images from the time felt resonant to the moment that we're in, as well as the show that we're creating. In Lovecraft Country, we talk a lot about the genre and how it's a metaphor for racism. And so bringing in the historical references as a Black person, that's a horror story. Jim Crow was everywhere.
Realism. Anarchy. Our restless souls trapped in my house.
This was not one place, one time, one person. Racism was all over America.
Bobo, it's your turn.
Will I have a good time on my trip?
So it was about placing things where you can go and research and learn more if you want to. Another layer to it was the American dream, saying that anybody can come here and make something of themselves, and that's not necessarily true.
There are 103 employees at that damn department store, and 2 of them are never gonna be colored.
This was a real time in history. And so all the references to the real life people at the time, Baldwin, MLK.
What's your name?
Baldwin. Hey, you're a novelist too? I'm James.
I'm Ruby.
You heard about that newcomer preacher that's supposed to jumpstart the movement, right?
Michael, right?
He's going by Martin now.
That's what I like about having people float in and out of the show, is this idea that they were there. And so in the episode about Hippolyta, we wanted her to find herself among other women at the time who were paving ways.
Salut.
Salut.
I am Hippolyta!
From the beginning, in Lovecraft Country, I wanted to do something different.
This story is about a secret birthright that's been kept from us.
And so all the references felt like a nice little bow.
Come on!
To once again make the show feel timeless and out of time, and that we're going different places.
And here we go. Ready and action!
Once we had all 10 of our episodes, we went into production and we went for it. I think we had 162 sets.
We had a water tank and fire sets. It starts with planning and a team of people that are enthusiastic about the details.
Normally you have an overall arc of colors and sort of an idea of where you want to go. In this particular project, I think it's 10 different concepts.
Each one is like a little film onto itself.
Now we're in 1955. Now we're in 1921.
Now we're in Paris in the 30s. Now we're in space. But like the 50s part of it, we rooted it in the 50s.
You put those clothes on and you automatically feel you're in the 1950s, and then you walk on the set.
We basically have to give them the canvas and then they paint it. Not only do you need to find the right location to serve the vision of the picture, but you also have to make it the practicality of moving a 200-person film crew plus period extras and cars and taking the circus on the road.
You know, I worked really closely with Rob, establishing how we wanted the show to look through lighting. We both felt that the most naturalistic look was gonna really make this feel right.
The place he wants me to go with him? It's in Lovecraft Country.
A lot of horror films typically look the way they look because they didn't have any money and they had crummy sets to photograph. We have spectacular sets on this show. We've got an exceptionally photogenic and talented cast. So if you start pushing spooky shafts of light into a location, I think the audience gets their defenses up. If you make the environment feel as familiar to the viewer as possible and then this shit happens, it makes it that much more horrific.
This is just a misunderstanding.
The Shoggoth is probably one of the most brutal things I think I've worked on.
Even in the stillness, there's this intense presence. And then when they do move, it's just...
We knew that we wanted to pay homage to H.P. Lovecraft's Shoggoth, with just a giant blob with the hundreds of eyes.
When you're designing a creature that is running through the woods, terrorizing healthy, fast adults, and a amorphous blob, really, you can't imagine the physics. And so on the Shoggoths, I had to wrap it around a mammal.
So that led us to talking about how the eyes move, how fast it moves, how strong it is.
So performance capture is you wear a suit, a Velcro suit, and you've got all these markers on yourself, and the cameras pick up your motion. So the character is basically animated by you. And then the skin is put on by the animators.
There are a few landmarks for Lovecraft creatures. You have a lot of the round, like lamprey or leech mouths. We were dealing with, again, a mammal, so I needed jaws. There are technically 6 jaws, creating a circle that references the typical Lovecraft mouth.
So one of the things I wanted to do in the Artem Lodge, I was very inspired by the Shoggoth teeth. You can see the design, you can see how they have these really sharp points to them. And I just kept telling Misha, I just really wanted to feel like the Shoggoths are right above your head, and as you walk in, something really menacing is happening.
We've been expecting you, Mr. Freeman. Welcome home.
Artem Lodge, that was just so fun to design because of what's going on in this space.
The Artem Lodge was like over so many different sets. There was the location that was the main house that we used for the exteriors and the entry and all of that. Then when we came to do the pieces on set, we kind of used that location as the inspiration.
That is correct, Mr. Freeman.
You go down a hallway, you're in another hallway, secret passageways, giant libraries, and then Samuel's lab, which we talked a lot about, Dr. Frankenstein.
A lot of Sam's lab was fabricated. We had these big, giant orbs that lit up.
We made the robes kind of simple, but I think really beautiful, and then we put the symbols going all the way down it and the protection symbol on the back.
The language of Adam is based on Sumerian culture. It was pictorial and yet abstract. So we recreated the alphabet and the language with that in mind.
Ooh, learning the language of Adam, oh my goodness. For the past week, I've been dreaming, hearing the language of Adam in my sleep.
It was interesting with Artem. We talked a lot about what's this creepy village like. You know, we talked about the Ricker Man, and we have a Ricker Man reference in there.
Here we are in Atlanta, which is a growing city, and there's not a lot of period architecture. We're lucky that we actually have a covered bridge that connected the house and the village to make it really feel like we are in New England. What's great is our art department was very thorough in doing their research. 10 episodes is sort of a daunting barrel to look down in the beginning of how you're gonna plan it out, especially a lot of really big sets that we needed to kind of compose.
All shows are challenging. This one in particular has been very challenging because there's this layer of science fiction and imaginary world that's very graphic.
The Winthrop house, our haunted house, that was very fun. My favorite part of the Winthrop house is the basement and packing it with all the stuff in, moving through it and not knowing what's around a corner. In episode 4, it was really, truly amazing what our production designers did.
Come on! Our heroes come across a plank that kind of disappears into nowhere. And then some of our larger stunts, we had a plank built 20 feet off the ground.
Give me a lot of credit. Go for it.
In those scenes, actors had to be harnessed for safety reasons, but it allows the camera to get 10, 15 feet underneath our actors and move around in more dynamic ways.
And action.
Let's cut. Go back to one.
Cut it.
Water tunnels are very prominent in episode 4. The first thing we had to figure out is how to make the characters go deeper into the water. So we built our own water tank.
It's basically a snail. So it's a bunch of tunnels in a circle, and as you walk further down, the water gets deeper and deeper, even though it's not changing at all.
Our key grips came up with a great idea of building a catamaran on which to mount my gimbal. That way we're able to have the camera at eye level on the water all the time. That was one of our biggest technical challenges and one that I think we overcame the most brilliantly.
When we were in the pirate ship, it was dressed, it was lit, and the cast came in to rehearse, and everybody was so quiet because it was so spooky. And even when the director was giving the cast direction, she was whispering.
Whatever you do is beautiful. He's got you here, so it's here, and then anywhere in here. It goes back out. I don't know what to say. Okay. Ready?
107 in particular is just an amazing journey.
It's fantastical, but it's rooted in something that is life-affirming.
This is easily the biggest variety episode within all the variety in Lovecraft Country.
I am Hippolyte. One of the things about being a great leader is finding great collaborators, and Misha has done that. It's incredible. A lot of times I'm not pretending at all, like I'm actually interacting with a machine. I have this thing that I have never heard of before in my life called an orrery. The prop department made that happen.
Well, an orrery, it's built on watch mechanisms, gears. You could wind them up, they had motors, and essentially the planets orbit around their sun. We had multiple suns. We don't know where this orrery came from. It's not Earth. So it's a different universe.
In the future world, I really had a lot of fun. My original idea for the White Room was based on African braids. We came up with the world with a sort of twisted building that exists in the sky, and then the White Room is in that building.
There was a certain feel of very sterile, very devoid of color and at times shape. There were times where we made Hippolyta feel smaller than what she really would have been.
You were not in a prison.
You can go wherever you want to go, you can be wherever you want to be, it's all in your mind. And bam!
She goes to the kingdom of Dahomey, fighting a Confederate army on an African savanna.
Misha was like, when she steps out of that training pit, she's a badass and she's like killing a bunch of dudes. But then Misha threw in the side ball of like, those guys are gonna be Confederates. But kind of turns into the same thing, you know, use the rifles and the bayonets, more like staffs and spears.
The armor we made in-house. We molded the leather. We're in Atlanta, and a lot of those shops are, you know, in LA or New York. But if we're here, we get to oversee every part of it.
We had swords, and we killed some Confederate soldiers, and I loved that.
She just destroyed those guys.
When Misha started talking about the glitter room, being in other worlds and outer space, my head cracked open a little bit. What does it look like? What is it? How does it work? We started talking about doing things that mimic the aurora borealis, and we wanted a solar system. We shot the actors on green screen and surrounded them with witness cams, and ultimately we are almost doing a completely CGI scene.
It was all fantastical, so it could be whatever we wanted it to be. So I made her skirt an orrery. So she's got a spacesuit, and then there's this, you know, big skirt that's, you know, metal wires with all the planets on it.
I love this idea of this show specifically of pretending, like you become a child again, and it's a joy.
It was challenging, but in a good way. It's developing worlds. It's the kind of thing, you know, as a creator, you dream of doing.
The most painful journey on this Lovecraft season was the return to Tulsa.
We really wanted to emphasize was not so much the violence, but more the affluence.
We wanted to just get it right, to see the vibrancy of it. That was very important to us, to see Black Wall Street thriving and not just being destroyed.
That is one set we had to be about as historically accurate as we could possibly get. We had a lot of historical research. We had a map of the city. We had the names of the businesses. We went very deep into it.
And we needed a period town in Macon, Georgia, which is a beautiful, beautiful intact period town that has, you know, both sides of the street still, you know, not disturbed with any modern architecture. We blocked off a street and managed to put up 2 giant green screen walls, you know, on both sides of the street, and it was like our own little backlot.
1, action!
The idea is that Letty is granted with invincibility. And I thought, man, you see a character come through a ball of flames. And that is a great visual. So we really kind of ran with that.
Ready, action!
It's never easy to watch people being shot and killed and set on fire. It was a very emotional night for all of us.
It's kind of heartbreaking to know these things, you know, it's not fiction.
I think episode 9 was one of the most difficult things to shoot, bringing up that ancestral trauma and trying to move through it.
As a matter of fact, we filmed right across the street from the house that Martin Luther King was born in. And that within itself, recreating the events of Black Wall Street and Tulsa, it was heavy.
That banana.
And we cut! Cut it, please.
Because of the nature of Tin and Atticus's death, it felt like an ending for this family.
That is the last shot for Jonathan Majors in the series.
It's a real strong family.
It was an ensemble cast that was really connected throughout.
We all feel so incredibly honored to be able to tell the story of these warriors, these superheroes.
The vibe on set when we wrapped was everybody was like, wow, this has been a lot. Everybody was sad on one level, but also like, we have done it. What I was hoping to achieve with this show was for people to start a conversation. We're talking, we're feeling something. I go to television for this long form discussion on what it means to be human.
The show is a fun ride for everybody. Audiences have been given something to think about.
You want us to tell them that wizards exist? That white folks got magic on their side too? I'm grateful to be able to tell these stories because unfortunately, they're still relevant.
I don't know what is more difficult, being colored or being a woman.
It almost feels like nothing has changed.
It's good the conversations that the show are bringing up, people are willing to have. Because until we acknowledge the racism that runs through this country, it's never going to change.
Letitia Lewis, quite a record here.
Lovecraft Country was an opportunity to really bring people of color to the front of genre pieces. We do not see people of color being the leads in things like this.
This magic that's haunting us, testing us.
It was nice to be able to tell a story in that space and for that story to reflect more of the world than just one corner. I hope that Lovecraft Country inspires diversity.
I want you to feel what I feel right now.
I was excited for people to be surprised by the show. I want people to always be on a roller coaster and never knowing where it's turning. We all need our imaginations open to what we can be.
To see these stories reflected in such a powerful narrative feels like I'm a part of something incredibly special.
I gotta face this new world and stake my claim in it.
This legacy belongs to our family.